Hi all, this is part 2 of my Prefecture streak review. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, definitely go watch that first, as I'm not going to do much of an intro here. I'll be sure to link it somewhere in the description. But in short, I'm going to be going over the rest of the rounds in the streak and talking about the relevant tips and meta. So first off, this is round 7 of the actual streak, and it is the last round in the second seed. Not too much in the way of regional metas on this one, but we do have Kyushu guy wires right here, so we do know that we'll be on the island of Kyushu. You can tell Kyushu guy wires from, say, like southern guy wires or any other ones that look similar, because the connecting piece between the especially thick section and the thinner section at the top is relatively flat. It's not a longer cone-shaped piece that you would find in, say, the southern guy wires. In terms of that, we didn't have too much else to go on in terms of guessing the exact prefecture. Mostly just had landscape, but the relatively flat valley that we're in, and we have mountains present in most directions, but they're not very large, so all in all it does narrow down the places it could be. It didn't feel like, say, this flat region up here of Saga and Fukuoka. It didn't feel like these large mountains here that make up, say, Miyazaki and Oita. So one of the things that it felt like to me and that we were left with was this flatter region here south of Kumamoto City, and that ended up being correct. I guess the important meta to take away from this one is really just the guy wires, as they're one of the fewer like region-specific guy wires. Moving on, the next round was here in downtown Nagoya. This is round 8, I believe. So here we had a few different things. In the distance, we can see, I'll actually go over to it, these yellow, black guy wires, which are specific to Chubu. Good thing to remember. They're thicker. Just like most guy wires, the bottom half is thicker, but the difference isn't all that drastic. And we also have a pull top, so we can review these 4-prong pull tops from the last video, with the Chubu one with the thicker pieces, or like the thicker vertical connecting pieces. I don't know what everyone want to call them. And Chugoku with these thinner ones, and Hokuriku resembling the Chugoku one, but connected like this, and a lot of times being closed in on sides, kind of giving this tent shape. So the one we have here, we can clearly see like that circle piece at the top, and they are not particularly thin. They're on the thicker side, so these are the Chubu ones. So in terms of, other than that, we mostly are just in some populated area, not too much to go off of. But if you think about Chubu, the biggest populated areas are really just in Aichi Prefecture on Nagoya, and then less or so in Gifu City, like Gifushi and Hamamatsu. So in terms of like playing the odds and the likelihood, definitely felt like Nagoya made the most sense. But we have Chubu specific clues there. That's really what we want to take away. So here we had another one. This was another really interesting round. So to start off, we have these pull tops here, which I got another picture of. So this with the thicker cone-shaped portion and 2 rings on the sides are very, very common in Kanto. And you can also see a bunch in, or sometimes in Chugoku and sometimes in Okinawa. But the primary place you'll see these is in the Kanto region, so around Tokyo. So that's just this combined with landscape means, okay, we're probably going to be somewhere in Tokyo. And in addition, we had, I believe, this square over here, something very commonly seen in Tokyo. And it was kind of hard to make out, but it looks like we could have Tokyo plates over here as well with I'll get a slightly better look at it, with the characters across the top and numbers going down the middle. But that was hard to tell exactly. So we had big mountains to our east and our west, but we're also on a east-west road, so we spent a bunch of time trying to find something that line up, and then eventually Mumrik, as it is reminder, it is an existed streak, called out this region here just north of Susono, and I didn't actually try to pinpoint it specifically, but as soon as we zoomed in this region, we saw this road traveling here between these very large mountains, and it definitely fits. It ended up going there, and it was correct. So, and that's a reminder. So this part, this eastern part of Shizuoka is part of the Kanto, serviced by the Kanto power company, whatever power company serves the greater Tokyo area. And this western part, this whole western part is part of the Chubu area in terms of like serviced by electrical companies. So even though we had all those Kanto things, we have to include this part of Shizuoka in that, and getting not just the region, but the specific prefecture matters in this case. Again, this is another look at that pole top because it's another really good one to remember. Next, we had a phone code to start off, which is relatively self-explanatory. So we had 089, which is, we'll scroll over to it, which is ehime Prefecture. But we had an area code that conflicted with the plates in somewhat, because especially what we can see from here is this big yellow plate. I don't even know if it's made of metal, but whatever this is, and we can see Energia spelled at the top, is specific to Chugoku. But one thing that we had in mind immediately is that some of these islands, so it's Oshima and Omishima islands, like these are serviced by the Chugoku power company, with Chugoku being this region up here, even though they're actually owned or like a part of ehime Prefecture. So those are something that made sense. So I zoomed in on those, and on happenstance, I saw this Yoshiumi Rose Park, which made sense with the signs pointing to Rose Park that we saw right in the beginning of the round. So lining up the 5K with that actually was relatively simple. Next one, we actually returned to Kumamoto, which we started off the video with, a bit of poetry. But this one was much easier because we had this thick red sticker right here. Even though it's faded and a little hard to tell, it is red. And that is, there's another one over here, one of the most well-known stickers in Japan, and is specific to Kumamoto Prefecture. At least 9 times out of 10. You can also find it in Miyazaki, but that's not often, that's much, much rarer. So we decided to trust it and go with Kumamoto. And even though it was way farther south and kind of gave me a heart attack when I first initially hit guess, it was indeed in the right prefecture. So that was a relatively easy one, but it's good to remember that this sticker, this thick red wrapping here, is very often in Kumamoto. So the next one, and where it all went wrong, so that last one was the 11 in the streak, and this one would have been 12 had we gotten it correct. We can go over the Tohoku specific clues. So this bollard here with the yellow strip and thicker base, like here, this overall shape is a Tohoku specific bollard. A lot of times the shape around the reflector here will actually be like hexagonal and kind of stick out as pretty unique, but it can also just be circular like that. It's definitely a like style of bollard to keep an eye out for because they're what's primarily used in Tohoku, and are specific to the region. We also couldn't see it head on, we were seeing it sideways from where we started, but we could see pretty clearly a Tohoku plates, which is this smaller horizontal rectangle shape rather than the longer vertical rectangle of the standard plates. And that combined with like each of those are Tohoku specific enough, but another more important thing to mention is the lack of tile roofs. So the farther north you get, the more of this kind of roofing material you'll find and less of the tile roofs. as these kind of roofs are better equipped to deal with snow and stuff like that. So that's another good thing to keep in mind. Just off vibes and landscape, because there wasn't, in terms of within the Tohoku region, there wasn't much more to go off of. We kind of narrowed it down to Yamagata and Akita almost immediately, very, very early on. And we figured that valleys between mountains like this, I guess our initial thought process was that there were more places in Yamagata that kind of fit like this. Like there was different places in this valley, even though I couldn't find anything, obviously, as you'll see, I couldn't find anything specifically that lined up. Perhaps I could have taken more time to actually search. But it ended up being a region I wasn't very familiar with up in Akita, which would have been our second guess, up in northern Akita, up here in the northeast. And that's where it all came to an end. An 11 streak on this iteration of A Balanced Japan isn't close to world record or anything, but it's still solid, and I felt like it made for good educational videos. I procrastinated this video longer than I meant to, but the next one shouldn't take all that long. Still have multiple ideas to choose from that. But until then, have a good one, and thanks for watching.